Hey everyone, time for another breadcrumbs video. Today's reading, we are in Joshua chapter 15, verses 20 through 63, and then chapters 16 and 17 as well. And so for me, one verse in particular really caught my attention today, and it is chapter 15, verse 63. And it says that the Israelites were unable to drive the Jebusites out of the city of Jerusalem. And so I was thinking about that because this is later on, actually when David is king. He's able to remove the Jebusites from Jerusalem. He sets up the city of David there. Obviously, his temple, his palace gets set up there. So he is the one that ends up taking Jerusalem in Israel. And the Jebusites were a pretty difficult foe for Israel to conquer until it was time for David's leadership, and he was able to get the job done. So I was thinking about that. And in Judges chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, it says that these tribes, that God actually allowed some of the Canaanite tribes to remain in the land in order to teach Israel how to fight. And so there was a purpose of God in progressively allowing future generations who had not been trained for war to continue to drive out Canaanites even after Israel was settled. And so, I was thinking about that in terms of Ephesians 2, chapter 2, verse 10, which says that we're Christ's workmanship. And there were good deeds planned for each one of us before even the foundations of the world. And so there are projects and there are good deeds that we are that are designed just for us to be able to do. And future generations are going to complete the work that began in earlier generations. And you can see Hebrews chapter 11, the end of that chapter talks about how the faith that began in other generations is brought to completion as we run the race that's kind of marked out for us. And so I was just thinking about that, how David ends up completing a project here that wasn't able to get done in Joshua's time. The Israelites were struggling with the Jebusites, could not get them off the land. God allows some of these Canaanite tribes to remain in the land to teach future generations how to fight and conquer. And obviously it was God's plan for David and his generation. It was his project and his assignment to take Jerusalem for the people of Israel. And so it just was making me think about our generations, how we walk out our time with the Lord, and what are those faith projects that perhaps began with earlier generations that are being completed in this generation, and in which projects are going to carry forward into future generations to complete down the line. And so those were some of the things I was thinking about as I was reading today's portion, that what begins in one generation under God's leadership is brought to completion down the line. Abraham's experiences and Abraham's projects aren't necessarily brought to completion during Abraham's lifetime. We see with the eyes of faith the promises of God, and future generations actually have their part to play in the fulfillment of those covenantal promises that are progressing and being brought to fulfillment and completion in God's in his fullness of time and in his good pleasure, and as he invites future generations to learn the lessons that he has for them along the way as well. And so God bless you guys. I pray that you're encouraged, that there's projects that you're involved in now because God ordained for you to be assigned those projects before the foundations of the world, and that there's projects that you're touching now that began long before you, and that there'll be projects that you'll pass on to other generations to bring to completion in God's good time as well. So be encouraged, and we'll look forward to more time together in the Word. God bless you.